So I put the first two problems from your worksheet are up here. So, domain. Which are the domain values, the x or the y's? Yep, domain are the x values. Okay. So the domain are the x values, which makes range the what values? The y values. Okay. So what we're going to do for domain and range is we're just going to look and we're going to state the values that they can't equal. Okay. So we're going to say for domain, they're all the values for x such that, do you remember that notation? Yeah. All the values for x such that, what are the values that x cannot be on this graph?
1.
Yeah, x cannot be 1. X can't be 1 because there is a hole right there. So we say, okay, x cannot equal 1. And where else can x not be on this graph? Not 2. Where's the vertical asymptote at? Yep, at -3. So x cannot equal -3. Because those are the two values that so the hole's at 1, so you can't be 1. And then 1, 2, 3, the vertical asymptote is at -3, so you can't be -3. Now, I am going to suggest that you probably take this and highlight your x and your y axis so that you're actually counting from the right place when you're looking at points. Just because some of these x and y axes kind of get cluttered and stuck in there, so highlight it or bold it so that you're looking at the right spot. So does that make sense? You're just saying what x can't be. Is that okay? We're going to do the same thing for range. We're just going to say what the range can't be. So all the values for y such that. And now the range is going to be some guessing. So you're going to do approximate values. So you're going to look at your graph, and you're going to say where it looks like the range isn't. Okay? So here, notice we're going off to the right and off to the left. So what value is that range kind of going off towards, does it look like, on your graph? It looks like it's heading off here towards the x-axis both ways? Yeah. Right? So what number is that for your y values? 0. So we're going to say y can't be 0 here. Okay, that's what it looks like on the graph, so that's what we're going to say. Now there's also a hole on this one too. So this hole, if we go straight over to our y-axis from our hole, do we know exactly where that is? No. So you're just going to say y cannot equal, I don't know, 0.2? Just approximate it. I'll really take pretty much anything from 0.1 to 0.7, and as long as it's, in the right interval. Does that make sense? Okay. Vertical asymptotes. Where's vertical asymptotes on here? At what value? -3. So x equals -3. Holes. Where's the hole here? X equals 1. And the very last thing we're going to do to these graphs is we're going to find 3 values for f. So in this case, f of 1, f of -2, and f of -4. So remember when you're finding f of 1, this just means you want to find the value of your graph when x is 1. So when x is 1 here, that's right here, you go up and you look at your graph and you see that there's a hole. So is there a value for f of 1 on your graph? Nope. So f of 1 doesn't exist. Or none, not possible. Any of those would be acceptable. Yeah, no solution I suppose would work. So f of -2. So you go over to -2 on your x. You go up and find your graph. Here's your graph. What's your y value at that point? 1, so f of -2 is equal to 1. And then the last one it asks for is f of negative 4. So you go over to negative 4, find your graph, and what's your y value? Negative 1. Is that okay? Make sense?
So the f of like negative 4, that you always look at the x.
You always look at the x, yep, because that's our f of x is there.
How'd you get that 1 doesn't exist?
We went over to 1 and we saw that that's where our hole was.
Yeah.
So there isn't a graph there, so it doesn't exist. Okay? So we're going to do the second one together as well. Same thing. Domain, range, vertical asymptotes, holes, and then those 3 values. So when you're looking at this, you need to identify if there are any breaks in continuity. So if there are any holes or vertical asymptotes. Are there any here?
No.
There's a hole. Here's the hole right here. So at this hole, what's your x value? Negative 2. So that means x cannot equal negative 2. I'm going to go through and highlight this so we can see it a little bit
You only
better.
make the x not equal negative 2 because there's a hole there.
Because there's a hole there, yep. Okay, range. Okay, so we're still looking at that hole here. What's the value of your y here at that hole?
Negative 4.
Yep, negative 4, so y cannot equal negative 4. Is that okay? Vertical asymptotes, are there any?
No.
So none. Holes.
Yeah.
X is equal to negative 2. Let's see, we want to find f of 0, f of 2, and f of negative 2. So f of 0. So here's my 0. Go down and find your graph. What's the value of y there?
2.
What is it? Negative 2. I went down 2. Okay, f of 2, so go over to your 2 on your x. Find your graph. Oh, it's right there. So 0. And then f of negative 2.
Negative 4.
Yep, but there's a hole there, so it can't be negative 4, so we say doesn't exist. Is that okay? Make sense? All right. So then you'll have the rest of the time.